Apologies, I look a mess again, but here we go. So it's that time again. The Premier League kicks off at the time of recording later tonight. Liverpool against Norwich on Sky Sports, and I want to try and see if I can try as quickly as possible do my Premier League predictions. This is just my opinion. I'll probably end up being totally wrong on a good majority of these, but let's wait and see what happens. So here we go. 20th, Sheffield United. Chris Wilder obviously has done a great job, 2 promotions in 3 seasons, getting Sheffield United into the Premier League, and they've signed the likes of Rafael Morrison, Phil Jagielka, Luke Freeman from QPR obviously. These are players that could do well in the Premier League, but for me, a squad's quite not good enough, but then again, they might play with no fear, so it might actually suit them. So for me, as much as I would like to see them stay up, again, like Cardiff, like Huddersfield last year, I think they'll go down. 19th, Brighton and Hove Albion. For me, with Brighton, this is the thing. Graham Potter's appointment is really out of left field for me. Obviously, they signed Webster from Bristol City. They signed Matt Clark from Portsmouth, but they've obviously loaned him out to Derby County. And the biggest one, they've signed Mapai from Brentford for 20 million. So, while I think that, obviously, Brighton fans got a little bit, I wouldn't say disillusioned, but they wanted to move on to a different brand of football from Chris Hughton at the back end of last season. They'll want to try and play a bit more attacking breed of football, but that appointment for me is going to come out of left field. I think it's either going to go really well or it's going to go really badly. So we will wait and see what happens with that. But for me, Brighton, with Graham Potter, I think will go down. 18th was a struggle. I actually had a different team in place here, but I changed it at the last minute. And even though they signed Danny Drinkwater on deadline day, I think Burnley will get relegated. And the reason that I'm pushed now to say Burnley is for one simple reason. They didn't keep hold of Tom Heaton. When Joe Hart was in there last season for them, they really struggled. And I think that with Tom Heaton having gone to Aston Villa, I think they'll be left short in the goalkeeping department. Obviously, Jay Rodriguez is a decent signing. I rate him a lot. Well, we'll see whether he can still do it in the Premier League now, though. So for me, Sheffield United 20th, Brighton 19th, Burnley 18th. 17th, Southampton. Hassan Huttle did a good job, obviously, in keeping them up, but it seems to me like they're just doing what Wigan and Sunderland did, or certainly Sunderland did. Sack manager, come in, saves them, starts next season poorly, sacked, lather, rinse, repeat. They have signed Danny Ings permanently for 20 million, and they've also signed Che Adams, who I really rate. I rated him highly when I watched him at Birmingham. I think that might be a bit more comfortable this year, but I know that sounds a bit stupid saying 17th, but I think Southampton might struggle, to say, but I think they'll just about have enough to stay up, so I think they'll finish 17th, right. 16th, I am going to go with Newcastle United. I originally had Newcastle as the team down to finish 18th because of the mood when Rafa left, the mood when Steve Bruce came in, because as much as I do think Steve Bruce did an alright job at Sunderland, and I do think Steve Bruce should be given a fair chance on results, not just because he's not Rafa Benitez, it is nevertheless a big step down. But since then, they signed Joe Linton, they signed St. Maximin, they signed Jethro Willems, and they've signed, I can't remember the name of it, but the right back from a Swedish club, Amons, I think it is, and they've signed Andy Carroll. Now, if they can keep Andy Carroll fit, free transfer, pay-as-you-play contract, 1-year deal, perfect deal for Newcastle, and Carroll's obviously really happy and delighted to be back, as he would be, because it's his boyhood club. It wouldn't surprise me to finish higher, actually. Their team's a bit better than I gave it credit for. So I do think it'll be a bit of a struggle for Steve Bruce and Newcastle, but I think he'll just about have enough to keep them up. 15th, I'm going to go with Aston Villa. Aston Villa, for me, are kind of like this season's Fulham in a lot of ways. They have gone out and splashed loads and loads of money, and that was the approach Fulham took last year, and it tended to not work. However, the difference is this time, I think Villa lost about 12, 13 players, if I'm right, when I researched it. So I do think they needed to sign a lot of players. Obviously, the most mental one out of a lot of them is Tyrone Mings for 26.5 million, or 25 million, whatever it was. I think they could have got a better player for that money, personally. But nevertheless, they've kept their team together. The core team that won the playoffs last year, they've signed, is it Genk? Oh, I can't remember what his name is, from Club Brugge. I think it's called Genk. Actually, I've got that completely wrong here. But the forward they signed from Club Brugge could be decent for them. There's going to be El Ghazi, who did well for them last year, signed permanently. And Dean Smith, obviously, got his boyhood club up. We'll wait and see what happens. Villa are probably the biggest out of the 3 promoted clubs for me. But nevertheless, I do hope Villa do well, because like Sunderland, even though we're miles away off that yet, I think Villa are a club that belong in the top flight. Although they don't have a God-given right to be there, but they've obviously earned the right to be there. Hopefully they stay there. 14th, we're going to go with Norwich City. I'm amazed at the amount of people that have written off Norwich, actually. Don't get us wrong, I know that they obviously haven't signed that many players, and I'm saying this because I watched Talk Norwich City. Jack Reed, Chris Reed, if you're watching, shout out. Content great, keep it coming. I think their team is better than what people give it credit for. Max Aarons is a very good player. Timu Puki's a good player. Buendia is a good player. Jamal Lewis is a good player. You've got Tim Krul, who's a decent keeper, although they've signed the guy from Schalke on a season-long loan. Patrick Roberts, obviously, has got a bit of quality about him for the bottom end of the Premier League, so he could do a decent job. And Daniel Farke, what a job he did to turn it around when he was probably on the verge of being sacked. Particularly after the 1-1 draw at Ipswich last season, back at the start of September, people were really uncertain on Daniel Farke. So for me, for him to have turned that around is a great job, and hopefully Norwich will do all right, but I think they will. I think they'll do a bit better than people give them credit for. 13th, Crystal Palace. This is an interesting one, because obviously I've recorded this after. I waited deliberately until after deadline day to record this because I wanted to see if they were going to keep Zaha or not. If they didn't keep Zaha, then I would have probably backed them at least finish 17th at best. But with him, they're mental not to use him in the first half of the season. So I think, and they've signed James McCarthy from Everton. They've signed a couple of decent players. They haven't really signed anyone significantly big, though. But the biggest deal is keeping Zaha. For me, I would think that if Zaha wants to leave in January, try and play Zaha as much as possible. Try and get him enough points to stay up. Get them enough points to make sure they finish in a decent position, and then they can afford to sell him at that point. And then obviously they've got a few months to try and scout as good a replacement. But for me, 13th, Crystal Palace. Roy Hodgson's doing a decent job, and he'll keep it up, I'm sure. Right, number 12, Bournemouth. They keep on improving every single year. They seem to have established themselves now as a decent mid-table Premier League side, which is what I wish Sunderland were. Paddy Howe plays a decent brand of football. They've got some decent players to go with him. I'm very impressed. Lloyd Kelly, I think, from Bristol City, although I think apparently he's injured for the start of the season, I think he could be a very, very good, astute signing for them at left-back. And fingers crossed they do well. I think 12th is about right for where Bournemouth's squad is, but they might end up trying to push for the top 10. But Bournemouth are doing a great... Paddy Howe's doing a cracking job down there. 11th, Watford. I think it was last season, I think I tipped Watford to go down. And obviously, I'm kind of I'm making sure that I don't make that mistake again. Or maybe the last couple of seasons, I think I tipped Bournemouth to get relegated. Sorry, not Bournemouth, Watford. Danny Welbeck is obviously the astute signing that I think is a very good move for them, especially on a free transfer. They can keep him fit. This is the cliche again. If they can keep him fit, I think it'll be an excellent addition for them. And a lot of their signings just seem to get better and better and better, even if they sell loads of players. Craig Dawson's another one they signed from West Brom, which is probably a squad player really, but I do think that they've got a decent side, and they always tend to start well, and I'm sure that they'll continue to do that. Javi Garcia, I think the name of the coach is Javi Garcia, is doing very well there, and I'm sure that he'll do it again and have them just miss out on the top 10 though for me. 10th, so here we go, business end, top 10. 10th, Wolverhampton Wanderers. Wolves are a very, very good side. I think because they were a promoted side for me, I viewed theirs finishing 7th as a slight overachievement, but nevertheless, I can't deny they've got a very good team. The big conundrum for here, though, is Europe. They're in the Europa League this season, and how much that's going to affect them going into the new campaign, I'm not sure. I don't think they'll do as well as last year, because I do think second season syndrome could play a factor, but I do back them to make the top 10 again. And, I think that what they're building at Wolves is a real good culture. Raul Jimenez, they got one permanent deal. They've kept most of their players like Ruben Neves, Connor Cody, Bowley. They've kept a majority of their good side together. So I think I'd back Wolves to finish 10th. And if they go far in the Europa League, it could be a very, very good, very exciting season for Wolves fans, I'm sure. Right, 9th, Manuel Pellegrini and West Ham United. West Ham's squad for me is a top 10 squad. It's a squad that should be finishing in the top 10 every season. Obviously, they've signed Sebastian Haller, who replaced Marko Arnautovic, but they've kept Felipe Anderson there. If Jack Wilshere can be kept fit, they've got Winston Reid still. They've got Diop. They've got Declan Rice. They've got so many quality players within their side. Lucas Fabianski, who's been a better keeper for them than I thought he would be. Very, very good, astute business by Manuel Pellegrini, and he's doing a very good job at West Ham. Keep it going, they might push for the top 7. You never know. Right, 8th, Marco Silva and Everton. Everton, for me, should be the club that's finishing 7th every year, really. They're a lot better. They're a damn side better than about 2/3 of the league. Although I think Leicester, Wolves and West Ham are starting to push them for that now. But they're never quite good enough to compete for the top 6. But now that Marco Silva's had another year, I think that Keane from Juventus, I think it's a very, very good bit of business. I think they've obviously got Andre Gomez permanently from Barcelona. They've got quite a good number of players coming through again. And he's starting to build a good dynasty at Everton because they finished last season very strongly. But I think they'll just miss out on 7th, which I think that spot will go to Brendan Rodgers and Leicester City. I think that Brendan Rodgers is a very, very good appointment for Leicester. I think the end of last year, you could see how excited Leicester fans were by the appointment of Rodgers. And even though they've lost Harry Maguire for a big fee for 80 million, They've obviously got Iose Perez coming in. They've got Tielemans coming in. Yesterday they signed the midfielder Pryor. They've got a quality side. Certainly going forward, they've got a very, very good attacking team. Defensively, that might be a bit of an issue with Maguire not being there, but it's a chance for the younger players, the other players that are there, to step up. And we'll wait and see what happens. But I think Leicester, if anyone's going to break into the top 6, I think it's going to be Leicester. So now let's get to the real business end of it, the top 6 of the Premier League. 6th, Frank Lampard's Chelsea. For me, this is a very difficult one because Lampard is coming into a situation where he's lost Eden Hazard, and apart from Kovacic, who they apparently had registered earlier because he was on loan last season already, they can't sign any permanent players. I think that with Lampard, it's going to be a difficult season. I hope that he gets given the time and the patience from Chelsea fans, and especially from the Chelsea board, because they can't sign anyone. It's a transitional year. For me, for Chelsea, their aim should be just to get the top 4. I think they'll just miss out on it, but if they can get into the Champions League, it's a good state. It's a good state for them to be in for when they can sign players. 5th, I originally had a different club here, but I'm going to put Arsenal in here. Now, I know they've signed David Luiz, and I know they've signed Kieran Tierney. Kieran Tierney in particular, I'm impressed with, obviously on deadline day. Unai Emery has got to deliver something this year. Last year, they should have finished in the top 4 and didn't because they lost to a lot of sides that they should be beaten. Palace and Wolves, etc. is amongst those teams. Brighton as well. For me, Leicester, they should be competing with as well. But for me, the problem was that Arsenal really needed to go out and get a top quality centre-half. And while I've got no doubt David Luiz for £8 million is an astute bit of business and is a decent deal, I do think that they didn't address their big issues, which again is this lack of good centre-halves. They've got Koscielny gone, so Luiz has come in, but Mustafi's still there, who's apparently really, really bad. Certainly for Arsenal's level anyway. Rob Holdren's never fit. Rob Holdren's come back from long-term injury. Callum Chambers has been relegated twice. Going forward, I don't know why. Pepe is a good addition for them going forward. So I do think they're sorted going forward. It's just that they needed to prioritise badly getting some defenders, and in particular some decent centre-halves. They haven't done that enough for me, and that's why I think we'll just make them miss out on the top 4. 4th was Man United, who I originally tipped to finish 5th. Wan-Bissaka, Daniel James and Harry Maguire, I think, are 3 very good additions, especially Wan-Bissaka and Maguire. I think they're both 2 very, very solid additions to the back line. And I think that they will definitely improve Manchester United. And they're the type of... Sorry about that, the dog's going. They're the type of players that they should be going for. Harry Maguire in particular, I think, despite the £80 million price tag, is an excellent bit of business for Manchester United. If they can get someone to play alongside Lindelof, I think they've got a very good partnership going. They needed a decent right-back. Wan-Bissaka came in, because Ashley Young, while he's a good servant to them, has been aging for quite some time now. And I do think that with Man United, they'll get into the top 4, and they probably might have a good go in the Europa League. But Man United should now, hopefully, are starting to rebuild and getting back to where the club should be, which is competing regularly for trophies. 3rd, Tottenham. I think obviously the signing of Ryan Sessegnon on deadline day is a good bit of cover. They haven't lost anyone significant, although they did miss out on Dybala from Juventus, which I thought for sure was, if that had gone through, I think that would have been an excellent deal, fantastic deal for them. They've got the midfielder from Betis, I think he's on loan but an obligation to buy next summer. So I do think that Pochettino again is doing fantastically, but he's at the point now where he needs to start winning some silverware. And here's a bit of advice for him, not that he'll take it off me. Prioritise and take the cups, the League Cup and FA Cup seriously. Sorry about that. Take them seriously, because obviously that's your best chance at the moment to get a piece of silverware. Don't just play your second string side, actually play your first team in them. Tottenham fans, if you disagree, feel free to let us know. But anyway, Tottenham for me will finish 3rd. I think the gap between them and the top 2 will be a little bit less than it was last year, but they still ultimately won't be anywhere near enough for the top 2. Right, top 2. I've debated about this in my head for so long, and I think I'm going to go for the same I did last year. Man City to finish 2nd, just purely because I can't see them winning the league 3 times in a row. Although I said I couldn't see them winning it twice last year. So also, Man City fans, feel free to take that prediction with a pinch of salt. If I say you'll finish 2nd, you probably win the league. So there you go. Pep Guardiola has added some good players. Rodri to replace Fernandinho, who's obviously ageing. The only issue I would think of for me is have they got a leader to replace Vincent Kompany, who's gone to Anderlecht? I keep getting that name wrong. I think Pep Guardiola's building a dynasty at Man City. He's building a culture. He's building a winning culture, a winning football club. And I think Man City will continue to dominate in terms of trophies for the years to come. They'll certainly be... Their big aim this year now has got to be obviously to retain the Premier League again, but to try and go all out as well, to try and go further in the Champions League than they have done. Because last year they got the quarterfinals, which is okay, but for them they'll probably be wanting at least semi-finals at this point, maybe even the final. And top, Liverpool. Now that Jurgen Klopp has won a trophy at long last, he's won the Champions League. Now the next thing for him, obviously try and defend the Champions League honour, but also to try and give the Premier League a real good go. Now they need to be champions of England, and I think they'll do it. They haven't made any massive additions over the summer, but they haven't needed to. I think the level between, and the reason Man City got Rodri was to replace Fernandinho. So for me, the gap between Liverpool and Man City is neck and neck. It's like that. And Liverpool only just missed out on the title by 1 point last year. Very unlucky for them to actually have missed out on the title by a point. And Liverpool had a fantastic season for last season for me, because even though they didn't win the Premier League, they did bridge the gap, and it was a much closer title race this time than what it's ever been. For me, though, Liverpool and Man City are the two best sides in the league, and that is how I think the table will look. So just to quickly recap, 20th Sheffield United, 19th Brighton, 18th, I've forgotten who it was now, Burnley, 17th Southampton, 16th Newcastle, 15th Aston Villa, 14th Norwich, 13th 13th Crystal Palace, 12th Bournemouth, 11th Watford, and then the top 10 consists of the following: 10th Wolves, I'm really having a mare here, 9th West Ham, 8th Everton, 7th Leicester, and the top 6 is Chelsea in 6th, Arsenal 5th, Man U 4th, Tottenham 3rd, Man City 2nd, and Liverpool to win the league. Let's find this out. Let's find out this coming season how wrong I'm going to be, but I'm excited for the Premier League to be back. Hope you guys are great. Love yous and leave yous. Catch yous later. And how are the lads for Sunderland tomorrow at Ipswich? We need it. And let's look forward to the Premier League again. See yous later.